We have found another one, boys and girls. We found another playable character, and I'm just so excited. I'm so happy because for a long time I thought I was a weird one. Grew up playing hockey my entire life, played professional hockey, played at the highest levels, and I thought I was a weird one. There was just a lot of people that, you think like, oh, I made it, and I'm good, and now it's kind of just screw around. It just wasn't for me. Always trying to get after, always trying to do more. And it wasn't my personality. It's not right, wrong, or different. It just wasn't my personality to just be one of the athletes. And it just didn't really realize it until I was older. And I thought I was a weird one. And then I realized, no, I'm not the weird one. I'm just hanging with the wrong crowd of people. I'm just hanging with the wrong people. So I need to get with people. Well, Brian DeMint is one of those people. We hit it off right when we met last year at Pacific Bitcoin. An incredible person, an incredible soul, a man that will do anything for you. A lot like JD, a lot like John Haar. Some of these people that we've interviewed and that we've already interviewed as well that you'll see here coming up. Just some incredible people. Brian wrote Bitcoin Evangelism, an Amazon bestseller about Bitcoin. It literally took the things I was thinking in my head and put them into a book. I was reading his book and I was just laughing. And everyone says online that we sound the same. So let me know in the comments if we sound the same in this interview, because every time we're on Twitter Spaces, everyone says we sound the same. So just an incredible guy doing a ton with Orange Pill app. He's got businesses of his own, local, brick and mortar stores, which is an incredible story you'll have to hear here as well. Stuff about medicine mandates and things that are going on. Just incredible. I mean, just another incredible storyteller. Another guy is don't know how he does all the things he does. And just very excited and grateful to have him on here today to share his story. And boy, are you going to get a lot out of what he has to say. And he's one of the best speakers truly in Bitcoin. And that's going to play out over time as people realize how smart he is and how good of a speaker he is. You're going to see him a lot more. So I hope you enjoy. Mr. Brian DeMint, thank you so much for joining me today and talking just about Bitcoin, your backstory, everything you have going on in your world. I was just making some notes beforehand when you had jumped off, and just Mr. Wide Ranging, like all the things you have going on. And I'm just excited to get into this and kind of talk about, some of the things, Bitcoin trading cards and some of the things we're doing, just really trying to get into education, talk about your upbringing and your story, just how you got into it, some money experiences you had, just growing up, some enlightenment that led to that, because that's one of the things, just the education that we want to help impart on people is really why we're doing what we're doing. And I know you doing what you're doing with the Orange Pill app and just Bitcoiners in general. So so thanks for coming on, and number one, and I hope you are doing well. And I'm excited to see what you guys are doing now and what led you to this point. So thanks, Brian. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure. I always enjoy just hanging out with you and talking to you. You and I, we met at Pacific Bitcoin and talked for a few hours, just kind of off the cuff with a bunch of guys. And so, I always enjoy these ones. Just because we've been so busy with Orange Pill app stuff, and we're remodeling my stores and, my brick and mortar stores. And I've actually not done a lot of interviews lately, and it's been more like behind the scenes stuff. Just because as a factor of a time crunch, but this is one of the enjoyable things in my day, when it's because some interviews you kind of like put on the spot and you don't know the person, and it's not always quite as organic. But you and I get to chat, and so it's more just like catching up with an old friend. So exactly. Anyways, I can always make time for that, and it's like a welcome little oasis in the day, in a busy day. Same. So yeah, anytime, man.
Appreciate it. Cool. Well, like I said, Amazon best-selling author. That's the thing I did forget earlier as well, by the way, of Bitcoin Evangelism. And again, I said Mr. Wide Ranging. I don't know how you do all these things. So please tell me how you are doing all these things with the brick and mortar, what you have going on, the business you've had for a long time, and transitioning it into a Bitcoin world, writing the books, Orange Pill app. Wherever you want to start, kind of take it from there. I can always circle back around into some of the beginning stuff, into like the personal childhood stuff growing up. But like where are you guys at right now, last 5 or 10 years, and what led to this point? What is going on? How are you doing all this?
So yeah, there's a common phrase, and it's very applicable to me. It's a jack of all trades and master of none. I'm like not a master of anything, but I like to do a lot of things, and I can do them 80% okay. So that there's kind of a rule in business. If you can do something 80% well enough, then it'll get you to 100% at some point if you either figure out a system or surround yourself with people. Fortunately, my team, the people that I have here, just in my structure. So even from my wife to my work associates, my business partners, I just have a lot of people that are frankly a lot smarter than me, and it's like no fluff because they're just people that are a lot smarter in certain areas, right? And so Dale Carnegie, he always talked about that in what was his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He says it's like the one of the most important things you can do is surround yourself. As part of the importance of having a social structure is because different social elements of the people you surround yourself with will elevate you in those areas, right? And so in terms of work, fortunately, I get to focus on the things that I'm a little bit better at, and then I have people that are in my weak areas. Like everybody that works with me, they know that I'm terrible with details. Like as far as like being A type and that sort of thing, they're like, hey, let us take care of the details. You just focus on X, Y, and Z. We'll focus on A, B, and C. And it works out well that way. So my brick and mortar business, we opened in 2008, and it started. My wife had this great idea. We were fresh out of college. We had saved up a bunch of money for a house, and we thought we were going to buy a house. We were going to get married, and the bank literally laughed us out. They said, "Do you know what's going on right now in the world? There's like a financial crisis. We're not going to loan." Give a mortgage to a couple of 22-year-old kids that have no credit. I'd worked construction for cash. My wife worked as a substitute teacher. They said, we're not going to give you a loan. And I'm thinking, I walked into the bank. I remembered like a year and a half before, my brother's 6 years older than me. I remember him telling me that he just wrote his income down on a piece of paper. I remember, so I'm walking into the bank thinking that I'm going to be able to just like write my income down, and I'm going to tell the truth. Like I make enough to support a mortgage payment. But at that point, they're like, yeah, no, you need, tax receipts and all this kind of stuff. You need more credit history because there was this giant credit collapse because of people like my brother that got into these variable rate mortgages and stuff. And it wasn't, necessarily his fault. Like people thought that that's how you got into a house at the time. But it's one of those things, like I was fortunate just by my age and my generation, because had I been a little bit older, I would have been maybe in that same boat and getting locked into a pretty predatory mortgage or something like that. So anyways, that was kind of my first experience with like really negative experience with banking, is actually being laughed out of a bank. And I remember thinking like our dream was kind of crushed. Like we were going to get out, graduate college, get married, and then, get jobs and get a house. And they said no. So my wife and I we had some cash. We'd saved up all this money. We thought we had a pretty big down payment. And so she said, well, what if we started a business? We always talked about starting a business someday. And what if we open a tanning salon? And I thought I was working on my master's to be an FBI special agent. Like I was working on a master's in forensic psychology.
Farthest thing from a tanning salon.
The furthest thing. And so I'm thinking I'm like studying how to profile serial killers and all this kind of stuff. And then so to divert into a tanning salon was kind of a weird thing. I still think, I think most people, we think tanning salons are kind of weird to this day, but we did it. And I became passionate about the business. It was like, oh, well, it's tanning, but there's a business entrepreneurial element to it. So that I thought was fun. That business grew. And then over the last few years, we've transitioned it into more of a light wellness therapeutic business. And that's what we're actually in the process of in right now. We're actually remodeling all of our stores, and we're changing the name. We're completely changing the branding. And so our new company is called Salt and Light. We're the first, as far as I know, the first.
Hey, really quick, I want to annoy the hell out of you with a quick little break to just remind you that we have to share the signal within the noise, because the algorithms hate truth. The algorithm hates truth. So we have to do all that we can to spread the signal. The faster we do that, the quicker change comes to the world. We need to be the change we seek to be. What are we doing? What am I doing? What are you doing to build a future? Also, if you want a written version of a lot of what we do here, please go to the description and find the link to our blog, our Substack, as well as you will see many links to either the work or the companies, the places you can find all the playable characters here that we talk to and how you can connect with them. So now back to the show. Thank you.
Full spectrum light wellness studio in the country. So we do red light therapy, infrared light therapy. We do UV therapy for vitamin D treatments. I was just talking to one of my people in marketing, and she was talking about a customer that has Crohn's disease, and this lady's treating her Crohn's disease with vitamin D treatments. And so it's really cool to be a part of something like that, where we used to do this vanity business, and it's just over the years, more and more people were seeking the health elements of light treatments. And so that process enabled me to kind of growing that business and stepping in more into the CEO role. I got to step out from behind the desk, and that just gave me more time to read, and that gave me more time to listen to podcasts and stuff like that. And that's how I stumbled into Bitcoin back in 2012, 2013. I was starting to hear about Bitcoin, went down that rabbit hole, and started buying Bitcoin. And then in about 2016, 2017, started working in the altcoin sector of the market. I worked on an altcoin project for like 3 years, and that was a really interesting experience. But here I am. I'm back to being Bitcoin only on that side of it. So we could always go down that whole little tangent and discuss why I came back to Bitcoin only. But I think it was a important like milestone for me in my journey of going through that phase, and then coming back and having a little bit more conviction on the Bitcoin side of things, and then getting to the point where I wrote the book. So the book I found through my experience of that altcoin project, we were going in and we were pitching to people this altcoin project and potential investors and stuff. And I found that these people with smart money, they'd have $10 million portfolios, $100 million portfolios of not crypto, but like of traditional investments. And they'd say, okay, we're ready to jump into the crypto space. And then at the end of our presentation, they would ask, well, what is a blockchain and what is Bitcoin? They wouldn't even know the fundamentals. And so it was this eye-opening experience to see this really smart money not even knowing the basics. And that was time and time again through these meetings. And then, so I sat back and I said, you know what, we need to go to first principles. And I know there's great books out there. There's really good books out there, like the Bitcoin Standard and some of these others. And I think we've probably read a lot of them. And so I just decided to take a somewhat different angle on it. It's, of course, when you're talking about Bitcoin, you're going to cover some of the same information as the Bitcoin Standard. But the way I like to describe it is it's like almost like the Bitcoin Standard and Bitcoin for Dummies had a baby. Like if you're going to try and distill this information down, make it a little less academic, a little more touchable.
I can vouch for that. Yep. Yeah. I can vouch. Your book is like that. Yep.
Thank you. So that was kind of the genesis of the book. And then the book, through promoting that put me in contact with Orange Pill app. I had been retweeting some of their stuff, and we'd kind of started working together on kind of just, I was a user of Orange Pill app, thought it was a really cool application. The concept of connecting with other like Bitcoin only people. I saw the value of cutting through the Twitter noise. Like Twitter is a great place to meet Bitcoiners, but it's also a great place to be distracted with other things and people pitching other altcoins and stuff like that. Yes. And so just as a user, and then talking to Mateo, the founder of Orange Pill app, he kind of gave me the long-term vision. I'd love to talk about the long-term vision of Orange Pill app and kind of its goal for being a tool for hyper Bitcoinization. But I got sold out on the vision. So he's like, hey, do you want to come on as the head of marketing for Orange Pill app? And I said, absolutely. Because I think it's a necessary tool, not just like, oh, this is going to be a good business opportunity for me, but like, this is a necessary tool for humanity. Like, I think I see Bitcoin as one of those fundamental things of history that's going to be written about. And while my name's not going to be written in the history book, I do get to associate with this thing that's going to be written about. So I want to play my part in this kind of like transition in human history. I think it's that big of a deal. So that's kind of what brings me up to today.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. And that's, and again, you and I hit it off just from day one, just from meeting each other, very, very similar, just everything, pedigree, backgrounds, things like that, very similar people. And that's what drew me to Bitcoin trading cards as well. And just in helping them with a lot of the same type of stuff, and which makes sense. Your story is very similar to mine. And it's just this greater mission. Like you said, where our names are not going to be written about in Bitcoin lore. Most people won't, just that's how history goes, right? But it's you having a part of changing human civilization forever. And that's the coolest part. And we all get to benefit. That is the coolest thing. So talk about that long-term mission, like when you got hooked up with Mateo, stuff like that, and him asking you to come on. How did that all come about, and what did that look like?
Yeah. Well, first off, you mentioned Bitcoin trading cards. I just bought a pack each for my kids. They're so cool.
Yeah.
Like my kids are a bunch of Bitcoin nerds, so they find that stuff interesting. But it's fun. It's like this cool thing. This we as humans we have this I don't know, this innate desire to collect things. And so my kids, they don't necessarily know who all the Bitcoin people are, but now they kind of do. It's like making these people into, little mini celebrities. I'd
The
rather
sports
have them.
posters we had when we were kids. Yeah.
Yeah, I would rather
Yes.
have these people that are perpetuating interesting ideas
Yes.
and, kind of, furthering sets of morals and principles. I'd rather be those the things that my kids are like, oh, this is my sports superstar, rather than like LeBron James or somebody like that. So it's
Exactly.
interesting how our generation's kind of turning that a little bit.
Yes.
But anyway, so yeah, the Bitcoin trading cards is actually a really cool thing. I love that, and I think that's such a useful pillar of the Bitcoin community, because it's so easy just to be academic and we're about books and articles and these things, but like
Yeah.
having a fun element is really important to it. So,
It's
anyways, yeah,
memes. I mean, it's funny what you're doing, the Orange Pill app, which is it's a communication. That's the number one thing in a preparedness situation, a survival situation, is community, and
Mhm.
that's literally Orange Pill app, right? Like
Yep.
that is like the mechanism to communicate. Then you have like the education side, which is like Bitcoin trading cards, stuff like that. So you have to have them both. You have to have those different vectors, kind of this triangle almost in a way, and the ability to communicate with each other and get in touch with each other. So that's what's really cool. It's you're Trojan horsing people
Yeah.
in a way, and you're helping that happen. So anyway, sorry, yeah, go on with
Yeah.
Mateo, just how the long-term vision and everything with the Orange Pill app.
Yeah. So the first time I met Mateo was actually the first day I met you. It was the second day of Pacific Bitcoin, and I was just going around the conference area, the tables and stuff. And I said, okay, like this Orange Pill app. Joe Hall had already given me some orange Tic Tacs. he was passing around giving everybody orange Tic Tacs, and he said, oh, you should go check this booth out. So I thought, okay, Joe Hall's cool. He knows what he's talking about. And I'll go, talk to Mateo. So I'm standing there talking to Mateo, and so he's giving me the pitch on Orange Pill app. He's like really focused on talking to me. I can tell I've got his attention. I'm like, this is cool. I've got the founder's attention. And then I feel somebody like brush up next to me, and they're kind of like interrupting. Like he's like standing there. I'm like, this is rude. There's plenty of space. Why are you standing like shoulder to shoulder with me? Like, we don't have to do this. And then I can tell all of a sudden Mateo like can't pay attention. Like he's like, he realizes he's talking to me, so that he has to like continue talking to me, but then he's like distracted by something else. So I look over to my left, and I'm like, who's this freaking guy? And it's Michael Saylor. So Michael Saylor standing there. And so that's why Mateo's all distracted, because he's like, okay, I need to stop talking to this freaking idiot, and then I need to start talking to Michael Saylor. And but he's being polite, and he's completing the pitch. And so then Michael Saylor just like jumps in. He's just like listening in on Mateo's pitch, and kind of asking questions and stuff. And then Mateo says, hey, he has a banner there that says Orange Pill app. He said, hey, Michael, do you want to come over and take a picture in front of my banner? And Michael says, sure. He's just like a total pleb. You saw him walking around the conference. He was just like walking around, talking to people. I mean, one of the cool selling points of a conference is like, Robert Breedlove's there, Natalie Brunell's there. They're just like walking around. Like, you just say hi to them and start talking. Like these people that have these, again, really interesting perspective on things. You can ask them your questions firsthand. The things that when they were on a podcast and you're like, I wanted to ask them this question. You can
Yeah.
do that at conferences. It's like part of the magic of in-person connections. But so anyways, so Mateo and Michael Saylor, they're standing in front of the banner, and they're about to take a picture. And Mateo's marketing girl says, hey, Brian, do you want to step in there too? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll step in for the picture. But I was trying to be polite and standing off to the side. So I go and I step in the picture. Well, I'm 6'5", and so my stupid fat head blocks the thing that says Orange Pill app. So Mateo gets Michael Saylor to stand in front of this banner with him to take this photo op, and my stupid fat head blocks the thing that says Orange Pill app. And so Mateo never said anything about it, but I'm like, I owe this guy like something. So I after the conference, I had signed up for the app and all that stuff. I'm like, I need to like retweet them and get them some signups, because I kind of feel bad. I think it's a really cool company, but I messed up his like best photo op ever. And so that's so I retweeted some of their stuff. They got some signups from the retweets, and so Mateo hits me up and calls me and he said, hey, let me give you the full pitch. I know we kind of got distracted and stuff the other day. And the thing where he really caught me, I mean, the whole point of Orange Pill app, for those that don't know, it's about in-person connections. So, you can use Nostr, you can use Twitter, you can use Instagram, whatever, to make online connections. That's fine. And that's how Bitcoin has thrived up to this point. And then that's led to conferences. I think conferences have really propagated Bitcoin further because there's a little bit more magic in the in-person connection. But what doesn't really exist is an app that helps you find people close to you that live in your area. So it's not just to people to keep up with at the conferences that you see once a year, or that you're going to talk to online from, people all over the world. It's going to be people that live within 10 miles of you, 20 miles of you, people that you can go out and grab coffee with regularly. Because I mean, how many of us, we have a spouse that's like very, very nice and very generous with their time, and they listen to us talk about Bitcoin, but then at a certain point, they don't want to hear it anymore, right? Or like our brother or friends, they want to hear it a little bit, or if it's a bull market, they'll sit around and talk about it all day. But when it's a bear market, they don't want to talk about it anymore. Well, sometimes you need an app to connect, so that's kind of the genesis. That's like the basics of Orange Pill app, is about facilitating those in real life connections. And so I got that from the beginning. I'm like, okay, cool. I think that's a really powerful thing. I think that's a really critical tool for Bitcoin. But then he went one step further and he was talking about some of these other things. We have an events page coming out, which I think is cool, but where I think we're really going to see some big things happen in terms of Bitcoin as a whole is when our merchant section comes out, and our orange pages, we have a partnership. And you actually asked this question in a Twitter Spaces the other day. Is like, hey, that's kind of what BTC Maps is doing. We're actually partnering with Bitcoin Maps. And so it's going to actually help make their site better. It's going to make our site better because they already have the supply, right? There's businesses all over the world that accept Bitcoin in real life, in person. So you can, shop online, but how do you find, a barbershop that accepts Bitcoin? How do you find a grocery store that accepts Bitcoin, or a nail salon? Like those kind of like more day-to-day types of transactions, rather than just buying a TV from overstock.com or something like that. And so we're partnering with them, but what BTC Maps doesn't have right now is they don't have the demand side. Like, we know we have an app full of Bitcoiners that are eager to spend their Bitcoin, because we know that, like the Bitcoin pizza guy, yes, this Bitcoin, someday we're going to be able to say, oh, I can buy so much. I bought a TV with Bitcoin, and now that TV is going to be worth $50,000 because my Bitcoin is going to have gone up. But we know, as Bitcoiners, we have to make those buys with our Bitcoin. We have to buy things in sats, and then we get to regret it later that it went up in value. But that's part of building the Bitcoin network. That's part of building a circular economy in Bitcoin. And plus, most of us just replenish our Bitcoin anyways. It's not like we're out that Bitcoin. But now, from the marketing angle, I think this orange pages is going to be one of the most critical things for hyper Bitcoinization ever. Because think about it this way. I, as the marketing guy for Orange Pill app, or any person on Orange Pill app, can go into that barber shop and I can say, hey, Joe, look at this. If you accept Bitcoin, you don't accept Bitcoin right now. I get it. You're a no coiner, whatever. And you don't even have to be completely sold out. I don't have to tell you about all the fundamentals about Bitcoin, but it's worth something, right? Yeah, I've heard it's worth something. Cool. Okay. Well, Joe, look at this. I'm going to pull up my app. I'm going to search. I can just, I can search the name of the town that I'm in. Orange Pill app will give you a number. It'll not just show you the profiles, but it'll show you, hey, there's 40 people in your city that are Bitcoiners. And if you understand Bitcoin culture, if you tell everybody that you accept Bitcoin, every person in this town is now going to be your customer, because that's the way Bitcoiners work. They're going to leave their old barber. If they're looking for a new one, they're going to come to you, whatever it happens to be, because they're going to see the value of spending Bitcoin as building Bitcoin, making it bigger. So we're going to be able to use social pressure in a really positive way to orange pill people, not even people that have to fully understand Bitcoin, because that's when Bitcoin is going to reach mass adoption, just like email did. The early people that were getting exposed to email, they were asking questions like, how does this work? How do I use it? Blah, 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 blah. But then by the time the second generation came around, people just started using it. They didn't question what it was. They just said it works. And that's the phase we're trying to get to. It's just skipping the whole, really orange pilling people, like you don't have to explain scarcity. You don't have to explain immutability. You don't have to explain any of those things. You just get people to start using it. And then you've just hyper drove Bitcoin, which that's hyper Bitcoinization, right? Like this
Yes.
hyper acceptance of Bitcoin where people don't even ask the questions about it anymore. Like if they do ask the questions, we're prepared with answers. It's ultrasound money. That's great. But let's just skip having to sit down and retrain everybody on money because we understand that that takes a long time. Let's just get people to use it. And that I think is some of the magic because that's in line with the core competency of Orange Pill app. Orange Pill app's all about making in real life connections, whether that's just a social friendship or whether that's a business in real life connection as well. Both of those are really critical pieces of a circular Bitcoin economy.
Yeah. Boy, there's just so much to unpack there, and it really is like the whole BTC map thing. You nailed it because I always found that to be like an awesome site, but like no one knows about it. I mean, every person I would ask about it, no one has, like Bitcoiners, even Bitcoiners have no idea that it exists, nothing. So what you guys are doing, utilizing that, incorporating that, and bringing the demand to something like that already has a good reach, but then helping them to build that, and you guys helping each other is such a phenomenal relationship. I laughed when you guys said, "Yeah, we're already partnering with them." That was amazing. Going back, and I know we're going to circle back around to Orange Pill app. I know we'll come back to it too. I wanted to get a little bit of your like the beginning, so a little bit of your story of just kind of growing up as a kid, where you grew up and stuff like that. And we just flew into things as you and I generally do. We just like might as well have a beer or two sitting here. And so getting into like what was your first experiences as a kid with money, how you came up, where you grew up at, and just kind of what was that like for you into, and you kind of touched on the college, and stuff like that and what happened there, but leading into like some of that enlightenment into what really changed you and really sparked you into like wow, this money thing, I really got to figure this out. So what was the beginning like for you?
Yeah, we kind of had a weird family dynamic. Like I was raised, I would say, up in a pretty good household up until I was like 9 years old. Then my dad got in a car accident. Actually on my ninth birthday. It was kind of a crazy thing. And from that point on was just kind of perpetually in pain and got hooked on drugs and painkillers and stuff like that. And then over the course of like the next 10 years, just kind of this downward spiral of drug addiction, and then ended up dying of a drug overdose. So it was like the first 9 years of my life, great family dynamic, really, really, sound family principles and things like that. And then it was actually a blessing in a lot of ways, to be able to see both sides, like a functional family and a dysfunctional family.
Wow.
I mean, it really was. I mean, it showed me now that I'm a parent, like what I want to do and what I don't want to do. But
That's incredible.
so from my early childhood, the street I was raised on was called Sovereign Way. And so I remember from an early age just asking my parents, like, what does sovereign mean? And I knew how to spell sovereign like when I was 6 years old, and it's like this long weird word and stuff. Yeah, it's like ingrained into me. And so my parents just, like I would always ask the question, what does sovereign mean? And then I'd like forget what it was, and then they'd tell me again. And so we just talked about sovereignty. So this concept of sovereignty and individual sovereignty was just talked around my dinner table at this like natural organic conversation that in most places would have been an academic conversation and would have been forced. But to me, it was relevant because it was the name of our street. And so anyways, then our last name, this kind of came up in that conversation too. My dad kind of mentioned when I was a kid, but then I remember my 8th grade teacher bringing it back up and telling me what my last name meant. But our last name, Dement, means we were probably, don't get mad at me, we were probably like a family of bankers or coin minters back. And so D or DE means like from the house of, and then mint means from coin minters. So this kid, like I grew up on Sovereign Way. My last name meant coin minter. And so these ideas were just things that were talked around our house. It was talked in my classroom when my 8th grade teacher was doing an analysis of last names and stuff. So I always thought about money in that way. I always thought about like, what is money? What are the principles of money? Most people wouldn't tell you that what fiat currency, Bitcoiners, we talk about it all the time, but I think most people didn't really hear the term fiat currency until they got into Bitcoin. So it was hard for us to distinguish like what was the difference between currency and money like gold and
Money,
stuff like
yeah.
that. But my family, they were a bunch of gold bugs. And so they always talked about gold. So this concept of scarcity, this concept of inflation was something that was talked about in my childhood from the time I was very little.
Wow.
And so I felt very fortunate in that regard. But then, then later on in life, like I said, that experience with banking, around that same time, we had Wells Fargo as our business bank. So when we started our business, I don't know if you remember hearing about the big giant class action lawsuit where Wells Fargo around 2008, 2009, they were doing some like unsavory practices where they were signing people up. You'd go in to sign up for like a checking and savings account, and they would like sign you up for 6 other accounts because their bankers had quotas. Well, we were part of that. Like they signed us up for some like credit cards and stuff like that we didn't even know about. I never even got them sent to me. And then at one point we were like 3 years behind on the annual payments because we didn't even know they existed and stuff. And so we actually got money from a class action lawsuit. So I had these interesting experiences with like talking about sound money, talking about like fiscal responsibility in my household, and then seeing firsthand just like how snaky banks can be and how little they care about their customers. And I understand as a business, like you got to care about your bottom line, but I just thought maybe there's a better way. And that's been one of the like really enlightening things about Bitcoin is like Bitcoin, it's a weird thing. You rely on people's self-interest in Bitcoin. Like that's one of the fundamental tenets of Bitcoin is everybody's going to be self-interested. But once you take that away, like once you understand, okay, we're all in this for ourselves, it kind of reinforces this community that like, oh, but if I make Bitcoin better, it's going to benefit you and therefore you benefit me. And so in this pursuit of our self-interest, it ties us all together and makes us kind of care about one another a little bit more. It's a really, really interesting thing. And so, that transition, that arc from my childhood to now has been a really interesting one.
Incredible. And it like you said, it aligns incentives and monetizes greed. It's like nothing before. Fiat exacerbates the problem, and a sound money, a finite money like Bitcoin, it reverses that. And like you said, it incentivizes everything to be aligned. It monetizes greed, and it really is. It's fascinating because for 110 years, I mean, no one alive today has ever been in a system as no one has been alive in a system where there was really sound true money, where the things weren't manipulated. There's always been a central bank for everyone that's existed really in America right now. There could be someone more than 110 years old, but very few, I'm sure. So no one alive knows what that's like, and so it's very hard when all the generations have passed and no one knows what the old world was like, or no one knows what something was like. It's very hard to show people, hey, you need to unlearn what happened to you in this new way that no one has even seen before. It's very like, just very weird thing. And that's what all these Bitcoiners are going through, trying to help people guide them off that sinking Titanic into that Bitcoin life raft. And it's fascinating. So yeah, I'm glad that you said that because it really does incentivize everything to be aligned, and it monetizes greed, which is so powerful. What, your background, I mean, that's fascinating because obviously most people don't have that, this background of money or thinking about money when they're kids and just seeing that growing up. Was there anything other than when you had the banking thing happen when you're going to get a house? Was there anything that happened that was a real enlightenment, like the GFC itself, or anything like that? Where, like, for me, it was just seeing the politicians, like the one party started the bailout and the other party finished it. And I would say that one party brought you up on the platform, the other party dropped the floor out from under everyone. And that was like the wake up call to me, quite honestly, like, oh, this is it's a uniparty. They're all in this together against us. It's not red versus blue. It's a state versus you. And that's what changed me. Was there anything like that was like a real, like, whoa, I got to kind of get out of the system somehow. I got to figure this out. Anything like that at all?
Yeah. So for me, I got into Bitcoin before this, but it was, Bitcoin, I was more drawn to the scarcity principles of Bitcoin, not necessarily like the individual liberty point. Like I thought I understood that. I understood it's like, okay, you can custody your money, but I was like, well, this thing's scarce. It's going to go up in value. And so I'm doing it as like a growing wealth preservation type of thing. But a few years after I was in Bitcoin, it was pretty dang close around the same time, but I remember I bought Bitcoin for the money principles rather than the freedom. And then after this incident, it kind of kicked more into the liberty. So, I just wasn't necessarily used to like always questioning narratives. Like I was like a pretty conservative guy. But it wasn't, this concept of a uniparty didn't really exist in my mind. I remember hearing things like the military industrial complex and thinking like, okay, that's kind of the liberal kooks and conspiracy theorists that are perpetuating those types of things. But I never looked into them. I'm like, that makes sense. I understand it's not the most irrational thing to think that there's a military industrial complex, but that's just the way things are, kind of like you said with money.
Yes.
But it was really the pharmaceutical culture that made me second guess that, and seeing the collusion of big pharma and our political machine. And so when I had my first daughter, we didn't question any narratives. We gave her, all the vaccines and stuff that you're supposed to give when they're little. And after her DTaP shot, I forget how old they are when they do that, 6 months or 9 months old. We had a really bad experience with that. So we'd done all of them up to that point. We did the DTaP one, and in vaccines, there's these things called adjuvants. They're things that make it so your body has an immune response. In the DTaP vaccine, I believe it's aluminum. Aluminum's highly toxic. It's a neurotoxin. If it gets into your brain, it's really bad. If it gets into your gut, it's really bad. And so the reason why they put these in there is because if you just inject a virus into your body, and viruses aren't really alive or dead, but they call them attenuated or non-attenuated. So like whether that's kind of how they say a more active virus or like a more deadened virus. So if you just inject a virus into your body, you don't necessarily get an immune response, especially if you're just injecting a little bit of virus into your body. So the way you get your body to inflame and go into this response state, this kind of emergency state, is you inject a toxic chemical into your body. That makes your body go into a fight or flight mode. And it says, okay, let's develop antibodies to whatever we're dealing with. And so that's how you kind of get an immune response to the diphtheria virus, for example. But it's the toxin, it's the aluminum toxin that's putting your body into this kind of response state. It's designed in there. Like people say all the time, well, why don't they just take these bad things out of them? Because it seems like they're just preservatives and stuff. No, there's actually like a scientific function for these things to be in there. Like the toxins are in there for a reason. And so I didn't know that. So we'd given it to my daughter. My daughter, from the night that we got her the DTaP vaccine, for the next 10 days, she didn't poop at all. There's this basically overinflamed kind of bowel syndrome because that toxin, wherever it kind of lands, it can inflame. So if it goes in your brain, you can have all sorts of brain trauma. Hers was in her gut. But she didn't poop for 10 days. And so there was one night, like on day number 10, and we asked the doctors, we were like, hey, she hasn't gone to the bathroom in days. Like, what's going on? And they said, oh, well, she's still nursing. So it's possible that she's just like, not pooping like that, whatever. Babies can do that. And so on night number 10, I bring her in, she's screaming, crying. I bring her in, I'm going to go wipe her. And this is sorry to be gross, but her intestine is hanging out of her colon by about 3 inches. It had become so inflamed. It pushed her intestines out. And so as a young father, I'm thinking, I rush her to the hospital, and we have this, it's like hanging out of her. It's, I'm really worried. And so we go to the emergency room of the hospital, and they kind of push everything back in. They give her suppository that allows her to clear out her bowels. And then we take her to our general practitioner or pediatrician, like her general pediatrician, the next day. And we asked them like, hey, what happened here? And she's like looking at the chart and stuff. And she goes, I can't believe they did this. I can't believe they did this. And we said, what? She goes, they basically just pushed everything back in. They didn't do any kind of anti-inflammatory before. What they're supposed to do is they're supposed to take away the inflammation and then kind of push everything back together. Because if they just shove everything back in there, what they can do is they can cause your intestine to rupture. And so she didn't really say much more of it, but we went home and looked that up. Like, what is she talking about? Basically, what the doctor was worried what could have happened that night is that her intestine would have ruptured and she would have just bled out internally that night. So just bad practices on the part of the hospital. My daughter, by the grace of God, was okay. She's beautiful. She's 9 years old now. She's amazing. But that was like the first time I remember questioning as a father, like, I never question what I'm putting in my kid. That was the thing you're supposed to do. I remember telling people that, like, I'm a good father. I just got my kid shot. Like, it was part of like the new dad experiences. Like, you have to go through the woes of getting your kid shots.
Yeah.
And so that was the first time I'd ever looked into why we're giving people these shots with these toxic chemicals. Learned more about that. I learned about the 1986 Vaccine Injury Act, which Ronald Reagan, as a conservative, like, that was kind of a bummer, but Ronald Reagan signed this thing that gave indemnity to all the pharmaceutical companies. As of 1986, the pharmaceutical companies were no longer liable. Everybody's aware that they're not liable for the COVID shot, but any of the shots that are on the childhood vaccine schedule, they're also not liable for. So all the things that we're kind of worried about with the COVID vaccine, those things apply. There's not robust safety testing. If you look at how even like the MMR vaccine, I know this isn't like a vaccine podcast, so sorry, but this is, you're asking like what started to lift
affects everybody.
What started to lift the veil. I started reading the studies on the NIH website about how do they safety study. I never realized, and this is absolutely true, anybody can fact check me on this, no vaccine has ever been tested against an inert placebo, meaning that there's no vaccine that's safety tested about how it performs against a saline injection. The reason why they say that that would be immoral to do that, because vaccines are so good that if we chose to give one kid not a vaccine, then that's putting them in danger, because vaccines are just so awesome and good that we can't afford to not give a kid a vaccine in a trial. But we're like, there's plenty of kids that are unvaccinated, just test it on them, right? But if the way the safety, so they will say, and this is where it's tricky, they are tested against a placebo though. I always thought a placebo had to be inert. I always thought it was a saline injection or a sugar pill or whatever. No, it can be another vaccine. So for example, if they're testing MMR2, they just have to test it. Is it any more dangerous than MMR1? If it's relatively close, it might be 3% more dangerous. It might be 2% less dangerous, whatever. But as long as it's within like an acceptable range, that's okay. That's considered safe. But we don't know if the first one, like how dangerous that one was, because we don't have a reporting system. So I started asking questions like, how can this type of system exist? And then you look into it. The number one funder of mainstream media in terms of ad buys is the pharmaceutical industry. They outspend oil and gas 2-1. Like oil and gas is the big evil in the world, right? Like everybody says how big, how terrible oil and gas is. Pharma spends twice as much on ad dollars on mainstream media buying narratives as oil and gas does. So you start to look into that, and they're also the number one buyer of lobbyists in Washington, D.C. So if you want to look at people shaping the narrative, the pharma is shaping a lot of our narrative. That led me down then, of course, to study the Federal Reserve. So I started asking questions of like, what other people are shaping our narratives? And sure enough, you can find several, it's not a lot of groups that are shaping our narrative. There's a few very, very powerful groups that are shaping the narrative. And then that led me obviously to understanding a little bit more about the Uniparty and how, we're seeing the Uniparty in full effect this week. I don't know. You probably saw like the January 6th videos that just got released. And then Mitch McConnell, the Republican senator, the minority leader in the Senate, comes out and says that was irresponsible to release those tapes. This is the Republican guy and saying that it's dangerous for our democracy to release information to the public. That if that's not the Uniparty, I don't know what is. It's like honestly despicable. But then it also makes me like, well, let's take some Bitcoin and like, let's orange pill the world so we can beat these guys. Like it motivates me more than ever. Every time I see the Uniparty in effect, it makes me want to go out and like share more about Bitcoin.
It's man, wow. That is so much to unpack. It's incredible, and that is such a great example of what it is at the end of the day. This true Uniparty. There's no other way to describe it other than, again, it's the state versus you. It's not red versus blue. It's not black versus white, man versus woman, old versus young. It is a state versus you, and that is it. It's collectivism versus individualism, and that's what they are trying to stomp out. And like you said, there's a handful of people or groups that are really have been seeking to do it for 100 years. This goes back a long time. I'm reading a book right now, A Conspirator's Hierarchy, the Committee of 300, and it's absolutely fascinating. And it just goes through, it shows everything. Club of Rome, the World Economic Forum, all this British MI6 guy that started writing like 50 years ago. And it was published 30 years ago. And it just basically just outlines how all these things happen and just puts together like all the links of everything. And it's the Creature from Jekyll Island came out like the same year as that. And the Tragedy and Hope, the 1,500-page book about this whole process that is being run on the people, basically, and the bankers controlling everything, controlling the flow of money, which can this fiat broken currency. So, there's just so much to unpack there. What
trying not to go too far down that road, like you said, but what else are you reading, right now or studying? So once that happened to your daughter, I mean, I can't even imagine going through that. So I mean, just kudos to you, somewhat keeping her cool. Because if anyone doesn't know, we could talk about that quickly too for a minute. But Brian's does Brazilian jiu-jitsu and can wallop just about anybody, and he's 6'5". So just FYI. So I can't even imagine that. So kudos to you for keeping your cool there. What are you studying? What do you keep your tabs on every day or every week when you're kind of looking at stuff, news, resources? What are you kind of dipping into? And I asked everyone this just because I think it's fascinating, trying to get some semblance of like, what are people watching, what are people reading to try to triangulate truth, I guess is probably the best way I put it at the end of the day.
And that's a great question, and I would actually be interested to hear what some of your other guests say. So as far as a non-Bitcoin resource, I think one of a show that my wife and I had watched weekly pretty much since we'd gone down the medical rabbit hole is the show called The High Wire with Del Bigtree. If anybody hasn't seen it, it's just thehighwire.com. That guy from the beginning of COVID had medical researchers on, medical professionals the entire time, every day of COVID. And we can go down. We had kind of a crazy experience with COVID. We were in the process of adoption. So the day after we had shutdowns in California, we got called to drive across country in an RV with my whole family to go pick up a baby in Florida. So I just remember thinking like, the world's going to hell. What's going on? And this show, The High Wire, was like this beacon of truth, because everything they said along the way with COVID was 100% spot on. And like a lot of the conservative people like the Michael Knowles of the world and those guys that even early on were kind of getting these things, and I don't think they overtly say it, because Del Bigtree, if you look at his Wikipedia, they're like, he's an anti-vax, yada, yada, conspiracy
he's canceled
theorist.
like all over the place 2-3 years ago.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yep.
On YouTube, their YouTube channel was taken down. So people don't want to be associated with that. But these guys that were kind of getting it spot on, that were media figures, there was only a few people that were getting it spot on early on. I believe that their resource was The High Wire, because it was really the only place you could go and hear the voice of those guys that were using ivermectin early on, that were using hydroxychloroquine, and that were doing other research methods. Again, all of the things that they said from February, before lockdowns, from February of 2020, are things that are being accepted as truth now. And it's not because they had a magic crystal ball, but it's because they were bringing on people that were really, really good experts in the field. And when I say expert, it's like such a washed out term now, but there are people that were actual experts in the field that study these things. And so, The High Wire was this great tool for challenging narratives on the medical stuff. And that was kind of how I understood that. I just recently, because we give to them every month. And so I was asking their accountant for my year-end giving statement. And after she sent it over, she's like, yeah, is there anything else we can do for you? I'm like, yeah, actually, I cite you guys in my book. I cited the censorship that the High Wire had. I talk about their censorship off of YouTube and stuff a little bit in the book. I said, can I send your team copies of the book? You guys, the one thing that your show is missing is an understanding of Bitcoin. And so I would love for you guys. And they said, we would absolutely, like, we need to learn more about this. So they just got the books last week. Their whole team, I sent 6 or 7 of the books to their team. And hopefully we're orange pilling that. They have a big audience. And this was just even an interesting kind of like metric for their level of censorship. So when they were on YouTube, most of their videos would show about 50,000, maybe 100,000 views per episode. And you're like, okay, it's like a kind of popular YouTube show. And they were on Facebook and they were on a couple other platforms, but YouTube is like the biggest draw, right? So that's probably giving you a sample size of how big they are. The week after they got kicked off of YouTube, and talking about coordination, kind of weird, they get kicked off of Facebook and YouTube at the exact same time. Like there's collusion.
Censorship, industrial complex. Yes,
exactly. But the week after, they posted all of the High Wire. So when all of their viewers went directly to their website and they could capture all of that data to know how many viewers they had, they posted pictures of their stats. Their next episode had it was like 1.5 million views. So even on YouTube, where they were only getting like 50,000 quote unquote views, they were being kind of like shadow banned almost. Like you think about that as a tool, right? That is a tool of YouTube to say like, no, like this isn't really that popular of information. Cause when I'm seeing it, I'm like, wow, not that many people are viewing this, but there's like almost this social, confirmation that comes along with, wow, 1.5 million people watch
Absolutely.
this, you know? And so their show, now that they're on their own website, they were posting the numbers recently. They're up to like almost 9 million views per episode, which is, I think they're right
Wow.
behind Joe Rogan, and then like
I was gonna say
they're above Tucker Carlson. I
they're
think
above
Joe
Tucker.
Rogan,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think Joe Rogan's like 11 million views per show. Then
Yep.
Tucker's like 3 million or 2 million or
Yeah.
something like that. So they're like three times
Wow.
bigger than Tucker Carlson because they have a worldwide audience and stuff. So
Wow.
yeah, it's actually a pretty dang massive show. And again, it's like proof of work.
Yeah.
They knocked it out of the park for the last 3 years. And they had been doing it before that. I mean, they had a movie called Vaxxed, a documentary that goes into a lot of this stuff. And so anyways, you want to talk about,
Wow.
we all need something that just peels the curtain back a little bit to start challenging all of the narratives. Because if you realize that pharma has a bunch of power and then they can control the narrative, it's not that big of a jump to understand that the banking system, like the actual money system itself, is going to be the most powerful one of those, right? Like people all the time, as soon as you tell them that the Federal Reserve is a private entity, they're like, wait a second, like
Yeah.
that right there is just enough to challenge the narrative. Like I ask people all the time, hey, if Facebook overnight was in charge of the money printer and all of our monetary policy, how would you feel about that? And Facebook's a good example because conservatives don't like them, and Democrats don't like them, and it's a good one to just win everybody over. Yeah, if Facebook was in charge of all the money, how would you like that? Liberals would say, I would never want a private entity in control of it, and the conservatives would say, I wouldn't want libs because they think of Facebook as a bunch of libs. I wouldn't want the libs in charge of all the money. People really clearly see how bad of an idea it is to have a private company in charge of your money printing. There's just way too much power, way too much influence that comes along with that. But as soon as you tell people, yeah, the Federal Reserve has shareholders and you don't know who they are, like that seems like a bad system. So these things have layers, and one peels back the other.
Boy, that's I know we'll go for a little bit more. I know we're getting towards the end here, but what is there anything? I mean, the highway, that's such a phenomenal thing too, because I actually have not watched that, I don't think ever. Sounds right up my alley. But I've heard of Del Bigtree many times. I knew he was getting canceled. I knew there was a lot of stuff going on there. So I'm gonna be looking into that. I love that you sent them the book, by the way. And that would be incredible to orange pill them and just their audience. I mean, boy, oh boy. And you see, Russell Brand starting to get it right. Joe Rogan talking about it. Tucker, being orange pilled by Max going on there, Sailor going on there, Nayib Bukele going on his show, stuff like that, right? So it's a lot of it just coming. It's a gradually then suddenly, and it feels that way. People are getting it. It's the younger generation starting to understand. Wow, this system was completely designed against us, but also for the older generations too. That the system was designed against them as well, like the 401k, all this garbage. I mean, I always laugh like the 401k. There's an average of 130,000. The average 401k has $130,000 in it, and then the median is they're like $33,000, and yet it's been on for 50 years, and that's all there is to show for it. I mean, just appalling. And then you have like Elizabeth Warren out there with the audacity to say, "Well, you can't have Bitcoin in there. Do you know how volatile it is?" Yet people over here can't even retire. They can't live off for a couple of years of their 401k. Yeah, she's telling Fidelity not to put it in there, stuff like that. So the whole system, the uniparty, someone shared, not to go down too many tangents, but Elizabeth Warren's worth $67 million, which I find to be way, way, I don't know how, what's going on. They're like, she would have had to save up her congressional salary for 200 years and saving every dollar to make 67,
Wow.
to be worth $67 million. Yeah, she's, taking stuff from FTX, I'm sure, the banks,
Yeah.
lobbying groups. And then she's over here like, you can't be in Bitcoin. We got to do this. We got to regulate, all this stuff. So the uniparty is real. Please go watch the Highwire, Del Bigtree, people like this that are Nolan Bowerlace, another great Bitcoiner, another one, but the Joe Rogans, the Russell Brands, people that are just asking, and those guys are centrists, really. I mean, they're in the middle and they're just like, what is going on? I mean, if you're not hardcore socialist, collectivist, you're all of a sudden like alt-right. You're like you're some fascist, it's just crazy.
in saying all that, what are, we just talked about some people, things you study and look at, like mentors. Are there any other mentors that you have, like in the Bitcoin world or business world, or even, and then talk about the jujitsu a little bit too, just like your world there a little bit. I mean, you are Mr. Wide Ranging. It really is. We could do this for hours, and we'll do other parts of this series as time goes on. But holy cow, anything, mentors, people, senseis, like.
Yeah, as far as like mentors in the business world and stuff, I think that's always something that I would like to have. I don't really have a mentor. That's why I defer to reading a lot. So I guess I have some mentors just through the written word. But yeah,
Yes.
no, if anybody's a old wise man out there, hit me up. I'll be your disciple. But yeah, as far as like my coach, my jujitsu coach, in terms of that sphere of life, the guy's a multiple time world champion, like really, really decorated competitor in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So it's one of those things where I got my black belt at the end of last year. It took me, it was probably 14 years from the time that I first stepped on the
Wow.
mats to when I got my black belt, but like 10
Congrats.
years,
Wow.
10 years of serious training, like where like it was like 5 or 6 days a week. And I was injured maybe one time with a knee injury where I was out for 6 weeks, but outside of that, 5 or 6 days a week for 10 years straight. It's like
Wow.
I always tell people, black belt, it doesn't make you more money than a doctor, but it's more schooling than a doctor in terms of hours. It's an insane amount of hours because jiu-jitsu is there's a reason why there's such a high correlation between jiu-jitsu and Bitcoiners. It's proof of work. It really is. Like the difference
Mhm.
between a lot of martial arts, and there's other good martial arts. I mean, jiu-jitsu is not the only one, but there's a lot of McDojos out there too. And McDojo is just one of those things that where you go there for 2 years and you're going to get your black belt, or you're there for 18 months and you're going to get your black belt, or your kid gets their black belt just because the coach wants to encourage them. Like there's not the work element. It's more of like a self-confidence type of thing. In jiu-jitsu, you're fighting and sparring every single day you're in there, and you're getting beat up. You're getting smashed around. Like there's people better than you. There's guys that are bigger and stronger than you that are beating you up. There's guys that are littler than you that are just really good and they're beating you up. When I started out, I'm 6'5". When I started doing jujitsu, I'm a little trimmer now, but I was like 230 pounds. I was pretty strong. I did a lot of lifting. There was this woman. She was actually an MMA fighter, but she was a black belt in jujitsu, and she was like a normal woman size. She would absolutely have her way with me. There was nothing I could do as a 6'5", 230-pound man to stop her from tapping me out. Rounds are usually 5 minutes in jiu-jitsu. She would tap me out at least 3 or 4 times in a round. I mean, it was
Wow.
straight murder. And so you talk about how it is some of that old school Bushido mindset of the better, more technical person is going to beat the bigger, stronger person. Now, obviously, if two people are the exact same skill, then strength and size is going to come into effect. But until that point, until there's like a parity in terms of size and strength, or in terms of skill, then the size and strength doesn't matter. I mean, people that are really skilled are going to have the upper hand. So that's kind of the beautiful thing about it. It's called jiu-jitsu, means the gentle art or the gentle way, and it's really
Oh
funny
wow, I
because
didn't know that.
it feels very violent at times, but you think about it, and if I'm in my shop right now and some guy comes in, say like a homeless guy that's on drugs or something like that, then this stuff happens. I'm in Southern California, so
Yeah.
that's not the craziest thing to happen. If I want to get him out of here, like if I also trained Muay Thai, kickboxing, and stuff like that. And what's better for me to use, a head kick or a takedown, and then drag him out of here with jujitsu? Like it's the gentle way is going to be it's actually going to be more effective, because if we get in a stand-up fight, like, yeah, I'm probably going to be more skilled than this guy, but when we're standing, everybody knows how to throw a punch. So
Yes.
if I mess up a little bit, I could still get caught by this guy. But if we're
Yep.
on the ground, it takes a lot less of it takes a lot of the variables out of the equation. And that's why, in a boxing match, there's levels to boxing for sure. There really are in
Mhm.
a striking match, but there's just even greater levels to grappling. As a more skilled grappler, you can control the variables. And then one of the things I think why I love jujitsu so much is I do a lot of competing with it too. And you'll go to these tournaments, and there's like 70-year-olds. They have age divisions and stuff,
Wow.
and there's like 70-year-olds going at it. And it's because it's something you can do for the rest of your life. Like I love, playing baseball and softball and something, I used
Mhm.
to play baseball in high school and college. And then now we play old man softball every once in a while. And it's fun to get out there. And I'll probably play softball when I'm 70 years old too. But I never thought I would be able to do like fighting when I'm 70 years old. But it's these
Wow.
guys have so much respect for one another. They get out there, they hustle, they're really trying to choke each other, they're really trying to armbar each other. But as soon as one of them wins or the match is over, they get up, they give each other a hug. And it's like wrestling around on the floor with your brother. The sense of camaraderie, not just with your teammates. Every day you're wrestling with your teammates, basically roughhousing with your brothers. And the conversations that happen after training are some of the best conversations you'll ever have in your life. But the friends you make after you just fought somebody, it's such a weird thing, but you're instantly like, all right, buddy, like, what's your Instagram handle? I'm going to follow you on Instagram. Okay. Like, and then you're just friends. I have a ton of friends that are people that I competed against. And that's such a weird way to meet somebody, right? The first time you ever meet this person, it's like you're standing across from them, you give them a high five, and then you try to fight each other. Like no other time in life
Incredible.
do you start out with so much conflict. And then 5 minutes later, you're like, all right, buddy, you want to go grab a snack at the snack bar together? So it's pretty
It's
funny to see
incredible.
how that works. But I think we're designed maybe that way as men
Yes,
to kind of test each other's metal a little bit. Like, what is this guy
absolutely.
made of? And as soon as I realized that this guy's a threat to me, some of the people I respect the most are people that are like kind of a threat to me. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to mess with you because you're a dangerous human being. So I want to be
Yes.
around you. Like, I want you on my team. I don't want
Yep.
you on the other team. And so I think that's just kind of dialed into our DNA. And I
Yeah,
mean, again, that
100%.
goes back to our the group that we had at
Yes.
Pacific Bitcoin. You
I was
stand
just
around
thinking of that.
and it's
Yep.
a bunch of like really tough guys. Like you're
Yep.
a professional hockey
Yep.
player. We got Harry, who's this just giant jacked 6'3" dude that only eats steak. And he's like,
Yes.
and then you got Zuby there that has, the female
Yep.
deadlifting record in the UK or something, whatever he has
Yep.
over there.
Yep.
But you have all these like really tough guys. And nobody's being macho. Like nobody was flexing on each other because you like look around, you're like, okay, everybody here's tough. Let's
Yes.
just talk about the ideas because I don't want anything. I don't want any of the business with these guys. So
Dude, it's so true. And I think that's why, again, we hit it off so well. It's cocky to say it, right? But it's just like game recognizes game at the end of the day, right? But I think you said males, people don't want to talk about this in society anymore, unfortunately. But that is the male stoic, in a way. That's how we're built. That's the DNA. It goes back to it's warrior culture, right? For thousands of
mm,
years, men were just warriors, and it's like going to war, come back in your shield, or come back with your shield or on it, and it was
mm,
just like that was the way of life, and you had to be that way. And there was just a mutual respect, though. And we talked about this at the conference too, which was men don't get punched in the face enough anymore. I remember thinking about this like 5 or 6 years ago, and I was like, man, like I just remember like I realized it hit me one day. I was like, I realized that I was in like all these fights growing up, or playing hockey, and checking or getting checked and defending yourself, getting cross-checked in the face, whatever, a piece of lumber in the in the teeth or whatever. I mean, and then you're fighting or whatever, and it was just like I realized that most people don't grow up like that nowadays. I was like, oh wow, like no wonder I look at the world so differently compared to the average guy. Not let alone women, but the
mm,
average guy. It's very different because most men don't even grow up like that anymore. You see, I mean, I have people in my family that like they've just since they're little kids, like just grow up with a screen in their face since they're little kids, never broke a sweat in their life. And it's like, well, I mean, we're not even the same people, like we're
yeah,
not even the same people. So how in the world those people cooperate in the same world together? And it, comes full circle to like Bitcoin again at the end of the day. I mean, people can argue that all they want. People like us tend to say like, hey, people should have to go do, roll around the mat a little bit. Not everyone's going to go play hockey, but everyone can go roll around the mat. You can learn to grapple. You can learn to, the art, right? And what happens when you get elbowed in the face, or, something happens, and, how to defend yourself, or how to just take it and deal with it and adversity. I think that's missing so much in life. And that's where Bitcoin, I think, attracts a lot of people that feel that, and then say, hey, it's a non-violent way of all this happening, right? And aligning all these things so that way life doesn't have to be as much like that, whether we like it or not, which is beautiful. I mean, that's great. So anyway, I thought of that line of men not getting punched in the face enough, and having a lot of, quite frankly, weak men in society, which is a very
true.
scary, very, very scary thing. And so I know we all bonded over that a lot for an hour or two. I think that's all we
Yeah,
talked about for a
yeah.
while.
Right. Well, and it goes back to this idea of meekness. I feel like we've talked about this before. But Jordan Peterson has this great explanation of meekness. It's when he's actually going, I don't believe he's a Christian, but he goes through it. He has a Bible series and he's talking about how Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, it says, blessed are the meek. And he goes into this. And I think a lot of people, especially Christians, think that meek means very sheepish, very mild, very mild mannered, and very almost weak and humble in that regard. And it's not what meek means. And it's not just, this isn't just coming from Jordan Peterson. This is just like the true definition of meekness. Meekness, and the way he describes it is just beautiful. He goes, meekness is a man that knows how to wield the sword with expertise, but chooses not to. It's not the man that doesn't know how to wield the sword. Of course, the guy that doesn't know how to wield the sword is always going to choose peace, but he's going to choose peace out of cowardice. The man that could cut your head off, but then chooses not to engage in battle, that's meekness. Like the ability to be strong, but choosing to not be strong in that moment. That's powerful. And that's what we should strive to as men. That's what we strive to as powerful women. I mean, like my wife's that way, man. I dig that about her. I really do, because she has a strength about her, but then she chooses to be sweet. She chooses to be gentle.
Yes.
And that's the same thing with Bitcoin. Like it enables us. We don't have to exert our dominance on other people. And that's what the fiat system is.
Yes.
It's the guy that knows how to wield the sword, but he's not sheathing it. He's just wielding the sword and just chopping anything he can. With Bitcoin, it's meek money. It's not weak money. It's meek money. It's powerful money that has the ability to change the world, but it's choosing to do it in a peaceful way. And it's a freaking powerful thing, man.
It is. Boy, I mean, that's a phenomenal place to end it. I think we've been rolling for an hour here. I mean, yeah, we'll have to save other stuff for the, in the future and following parts and stuff, but man, that's a great place to end. So Amazon bestselling book, Bitcoin Evangelism. And again, I'll link that in here too, as well, and get that in here, but check that book out. Phenomenal book. Great. And you did such a great job on it too, of just bring it down to, layman's terms. I don't know what the best way to say it really is, but layman terms, and not as academic, because again, the average person reads at third grade level. So as great as some of these really high level books are, like, that's awesome. However, we need to bring it down a notch or two so that everyone can understand what we're working with. So your book is phenomenal with that. I mean, tons of pictures in there, color pictures, which you went the extra mile, did the color. I mean, so it's phenomenal. I remember flipping through it right when I got it. I was like, man, this is like the exact book. It was like everything out of my head. It was just like in this book already. So that's why I loved it too. That's why, as Kiyosaki always says, like, well, you're right, because I agree with you. So, so I know you're right, because everything I agreed with, I was like, oh, he's right. He gets it. So
that's funny, because I'm sure there's nothing in the book. There's probably nothing in the book that was like new to you, because you're pretty well studied in this. But sometimes we just like to read a little bit of confirmation, and hopefully it sharpens our thinking. Repetition and those types of things. I think for a lot of people, there's going to be new things that they're not exposed to, but somebody that's real deep down there. It's basically, the goal is to be an aggregation of thousands of hours of research that many of us have done. That's kind of like dialed in for somebody that's maybe coming into the space. Or, the reason why it's called Bitcoin evangelism, it's an homage to Christian evangelism. Christian evangelism is one of the most successful movements in the history of humanity. Christianity spread to every area of the globe, every corner of the globe. So let's borrow some of that, right? And in Christian evangelism, what are you dealing with? You're dealing with the atheists, the people that don't believe, and you're dealing with the pagans, the people that believe in a false religion, right? And so with that, what is the relevance to that in Bitcoin? You have the no coiners, and then you have the altcoin pagans that believe in other things. And so I'm very sensitive in the way that a Christian evangelist would, dine, Jesus ate with sinners, that type of thing. Like I'm very soft towards the altcoins, because I used to be there, and I talk through, because I think that's where altcoiners get lost by the Bitcoiners a little bit, is because we say things 100%. Like we're just Bitcoin maxis. It almost sounds like we don't even know what altcoins are. I'm pretty sure every Bitcoin maxi knows all about the altcoins, but they never spend any time talking about it. So altcoiners think, oh, they just don't know about this new tech. I'm so far ahead of the curve. I like to in the book to explain, here's what we as Bitcoiners understand about these things. And I even say the phrase, like, I think Ethereum's cool in the sense of what it's done. It's provided a field of research for smart contracts. That's not something that was being pioneered on that. But I wouldn't store my wealth in that. Like, let that be a research and development arm for Bitcoin. That's fantastic. That's cool. But maybe not put your money there. Or, like, read about it, learn about it. And the things that work over there will probably be built in a second or third layer on top of Bitcoin. And that's great. Like it's ultimately going to benefit Bitcoin. But so I do take a very soft approach to the altcoins. I've actually had some Bitcoin maxis critique it for saying for sounding too nice to the altcoins. And that's fine. I think ultimately we're all going to take different approaches to it.
You have to.
And so this is for your friend that's an altcoiner. I think it's a good read. So anyways, yeah,
It
give
is.
it to an altcoiner, share it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a phenomenal book. And I was thinking this earlier, and you maybe just think of this. It's the Crucible. Alex, Stanzik that runs the Cafe Bitcoin pod there in the morning spaces. We always joke about the Crucible, and we might have even talked about this in the group when we were at Pacific Bitcoin together. But it's he's like, yeah, I just had this concept like we all men have to go through, like they want the Crucible, they want to go through the Crucible in their life, like the gauntlet, Bud's Hell Week, whatever, and that's like we all yearn to do that. But Bitcoiners, in a way, it's funny because I truly believe that Bitcoiners all have to come through that same breach as well, and that's what kind of bonds us all together as well. You have to go through. None of us wake up like, oh, I'm a genius, I'm a Bitcoiner, look at me. I mean, very few, if any, people really around anymore were like, hey, I was here in 2009, 10, 11, 12. I mean, like pretty much no one, right? Any of those guys, or they sold their stuff off, they lost it or whatever. And so we all come through the same breach, the same, the kill door. I forget what they call it now when you're entering a room, close quarter combat, like it's, that's we all have to go through that. We all have to enter that, and that's what like bonds everyone together. Hell Week bonds everyone together. That type of thing. And Bitcoiners have to go through that. It's like all these medical events or financial collapses or seeing all these things happen. These instances in our life or experiences where we're like, oh no, I've seen this. Fool me once. Fool me twice. Like no, I'm not. So we all have to get there in our own way, like you said. We all have to. But I do believe like the way you do it is great, because you're going to catch a lot more what's the saying, you catch a lot more flies with honey than you do vinegar. Being toxic, there's just times to do that, but at the end of the day, you're not going to sell many people like going into their living room and just berating them, right? Like that's not the way to do it. So you have to gently guide people off the life raft. You can't just like throw them off the top of the Titanic into the lifeboat down below. That's just not how it works. So time and place for it, but the book is great.
Sure.
So everyone has to go check that out. And then any last comments you want to say about, just Orange Pill app, what you're doing there, or anything, and where to find you, where to find you there, obviously where to find Orange Pill app, where to find you on, Twitter, Nostr, YouTube, whatever.
Yeah, we're on all those places, Twitter, Nostr. I mean, basically, if you just look up Brian DeMint or Orange Pill app, you're going to find it in the search. So the coolest thing is Orange Pill app is growing so fast. The thing's like 3 months old, and we just passed 2,000 users. And I think there's going to be business books, and this isn't like bragging about me, because this wasn't my idea, but I think there will be business books written about Orange Pill app someday, because it's the only social network that's ever started out with a paywall. Like that doesn't make sense to start out a social network with a paywall, because you typically want as many users as possible. You don't care if they're quality users. You don't care if they're good, bad, whatever. You just want users to fill up your network. So when people log in, they see, oh, there's 1 million users. Like that's what everybody wants, 1 million users. And then that'll kind of flywheel into billions of users, that sort of thing. Because that's how every social network started. But you're not getting quality. You're getting people that aren't treating it well. That aren't taking it seriously. You're getting spammers, you're getting scammers, you're getting all that kind of stuff. The paywall isn't a bug, and it's not even necessary for the app to make money. The company's just like stacking sats. If it gets paid, we're just like holding Bitcoin with it. Or if there's certain memberships where you can choose to sponsor Salvadorians, and so like, the only people who get free memberships are Salvadorians. If you sign up so you can buy like an annual or a lifetime membership for 300,000 sats, and then you're just paid forever. It's the Giga Chad membership is a 500,000 sat membership, and you're sponsoring Salvadorians with that. So if you want to kind of help perpetuate the circular Bitcoin economy down in El Salvador, you can sponsor Salvadorians that way. You can do fiat too. Like you can buy it through the app store. But if you sign up, if somebody wants to go sign up and pay in sats, you have to do it through our website, because the app store doesn't like when we pay in sats and circumvent their commissions. But it's signup.theorangepillapp.com. And it's just a fantastic way to meet Bitcoiners. I tell people all the time, just go on, try it out. We're building new features out every day. But right now you can go search people in your area. You can find people that are very close to you. It uses non-specific geolocation. A lot of Bitcoiners are concerned about privacy. It doesn't tell anybody exactly where you are. It gives like a 10-mile approximation of where you are. So nobody could find you in your house or anything like that. They would kind of know generally the city you're in, that type of thing. But beyond that, there's no specificity, and you can be as anonymous as you want. You don't have to put any KYC in there. You don't have to put in your name. You can use a fake email. You can use whatever you want to stay as anonymous as you want until you meet with somebody in person. And then, that's privacy. I don't know if you listen to Simply Bitcoin podcast, go back yesterday. They
The
read
Cypherpunk Manifesto. So good.
Cypherpunk Manifesto. Yes, man. And it was they read through that whole thing, and they talked about the difference between privacy and anonymity. I don't think I've ever thought of like the distinction between privacy and anonymity. Like, privacy is just this idea that we want the freedom to reveal who we are to the people we want to reveal that. Like, that's our privilege to do that. That was the whole like theorem behind the cypherpunks. So that's exactly what Orange Pill app's doing. You stay as anonymous as you want, but then you have privacy. So as soon as you want to reveal your identity to somebody, if you do, then you can do that, and you can do that in person. You can do that online, however you want to do that. But we don't know any of that stuff. So it's a really good tool for that. Just if people want to, and this is one of the cool things. If you want to start building, like, it's a bear market right now. We all know that we're supposed to stack sats in the bear market, and we all know that developers are supposed to build in the bear markets too. But every pleb can actually build right now. We're building a social network, literally the social layer for Bitcoin. We talk about this all the time. The layer 0 of Bitcoin. So layer 2 is Lightning, layer 3 is whatever. Layer 0 is the people. The social layer is the substrate even below the layer 1 Bitcoin blockchain. Because without the people, Bitcoin has nobody to spend it, nobody to hold it, any of those things. So if we can actually develop the social network, everybody that signs up on Orange Pill app right now is actually part of the building process. They're not just stacking sats. The phrase we use is we're stacking friends who stack sats. If you can do that, we can help build in the bear market so that we can help usher in hyper Bitcoinization faster. Everybody can make hyper Bitcoinization happen like today if we just start developing the circular Bitcoin economy. And this is step 1 of that.
It's a great point. Do you guys have any plans? And first off, every person that's pulling dollars, pulling fiat, pesos, yen, whatever it is, out of that fiat system, you are helping to take power back into your own hands and to everyone outside of that system. And you're putting power back in the hands of the people and taking away from the government's polarization, hate, division, all the stuff that's the fiat system allows. So that's first off. So it's a great point by you. And do you guys have any plans? And again, I'm not a developer, so I don't know. And you might not know this either. But any plans to, you guys have a Nostr account and stuff like that, the Orange Pill, any plans to be able to use that eventually at the protocol or anything like that? Do you know of anything like that the team, the back end team at Orange Pill has in the works or anything?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I know for sure, like, I'm not a developer, so I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I'm not either. So I gotta be careful.
But I know that conversation is happening internally. So what we have right now, as far as Nostr integration, is so if you want a purple check mark on Nostr, like if you want to verify your Damus account or whatever protocol you use, you get an Orange Pill app handle, like a Nostr verification. So it's a NIP5 verification. So if you sign up for Orange Pill app, you'll be able to get verified on Nostr. And that's just great. There's a little synergy there. It helps people understand on Nostr, if you're a real person, that you have some sort of tie to the real world. And so in the same way, I mean, you think about what is the Twitter blue check mark says that, hey, I'm real enough to have paid, $6.99 a month or $8.99 a month or whatever. Well, if you have a purple check mark and you're verified by Orange Pill app, it means you're a real person. You paid $2.99 a month to be verified. So you're verifying your Nostr account with your Orange Pill app account. There's great synergy there. They're not competitive apps. I think that Nostr is a really good tool for Bitcoiners. And so, if we can use some of that substrate for the Orange Pill app protocol, I think that would be a strength. Right now, we're already harnessing that a bit. So I think that we're already on top of that. But as I learn more about Nostr, I think that it gets more exciting as far as how do you integrate a little bit more with it.
Absolutely. Great stuff, brother. I appreciate you coming on here so much, Brian. And then, in a month or two, you'll have to come back on and we can talk more about, maybe before Miami, something like that, kind of talk about different progression in Orange Pill app, Nostr, a bunch of these things and how everything is going. And then, before Miami and stuff like that. So what is it, March? I mean, probably in a month or so, 4 or 6 weeks, do it again, see what's going on, and prep for Miami, because that's obviously going to be a big one. I think there's gonna be a lot of cool stuff coming out there. I know Bitcoin Trading Card Series 2 is dropping then, and they have the pre-sales right now. So there's a lot of cool stuff and synergies there.
So, and then you already mentioned, again, where can everyone find you again? I might as well say it again, where everyone can find you.
On Twitter. Twitter is probably the best place to find us. So I'm at Brian the THE Mint, and then Orange Pill App is just at Orange Pill App. I usually, if you DM or whatever the Orange Pill App Twitter handle, it's either me or Mateo. We're either one of us is going to get back to you. So yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate you so much, so much coming on here, and look forward to doing it again. And let's go. Bright orange future, baby.
Thank you, Brandon. Yeah, man. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Talk soon. Oh boy. Wow. What an episode. Fortunately, a playable character in a sea of non-playable characters in this world where people are just in their phones, not paying attention, can't critically think, can't think for themselves, just being led around by the blind, led to the slaughter like sheep, dumb and like sheep being led to the slaughter, dumb and blind. I believe it was a George Washington quote, paraphrasing. And Brian is one of those people wide awake, wrote Bitcoin Evangelism. Again, I hope you enjoyed his stories. He's an incredible speaker, like I said in the beginning, so I hope that came through. And he's one of a kind. He's a person, a kindred spirit of mine that I just hit it off with, and I just appreciate him being in my life. And I'm just grateful that he took some time out of his day. He's a very busy guy, as you can see, has a lot going on, family, businesses, etc. And he is doing everything he can. I mean, you heard it here in the interview. He's like, my name's never going to be remembered, but I'm doing all I can to push forward freedom for all human beings. How can you not love a person like that? Boy, oh boy. Just thank you, Brian. Thank you for coming on. If you like this, please share it. Please share the video out. Please like the video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And the algorithm hates truth. And we try to question everything here with boldness. So the only way we can have the least amount of collateral damage possible and have freedom for all people and property rights and wealth accumulation for people over time is if we overwhelm the system with positivity, if we overwhelm it with good signal. That's it. And if you feel inclined, we are part of the value for value economy here in Bitcoin. If we provided value for you here today, please consider tipping with our Lightning address in the description as well, with links to Brian, the Orange Pill app, and everything he's doing in Bitcoin Evangelism. The book there you can get on Amazon. We just appreciate you more than you know. And this is the reason we do this, is to push forward this bright orange future, this sound money future where everything's aligned. The incentives are aligned, monetizing greed and putting everyone on the same side of the tracks instead of the haves and the have-nots. And I just appreciate every single person from the bottom of my heart, what they do to push forward this future, because it truly is for our children, for the kids. I hope you enjoyed Brian's interview today, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.